Welcome to Churchill Scale Modelling. This is part 2 of AFV's club's Churchill Mark IV. Scale is 1 to 35. In this build, I'm going to be concentrating on building the suspension for the tank. Now, before we get into the build, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far. I've just reached 2,000 subscribers, and for me that is a huge amount of people subscribing to the channel. I only started this channel just for a bit of fun and for my own personal use, really. I don't really push it that much, so it's just amazing that anyone, let alone 2,000 people, are prepared to have a look at my videos. So thank you so much. I'm just overjoyed by it all. So let's get into this build and see how well I get on. The first thing I have to do is drill some holes into the side skirts where the tracks go. This will be to fit little bits and pieces onto the hull itself. So I'm just using my pin drive to do this. Each area has got a little location mark in it so that you can use that as a guide. And it turns out these little holes were for small little rivets that have to be attached. Each one is quite small, but they do have their own little location pin in them. So the drill bit I used wasn't quite large enough, so I had to open them up slightly. And I did that just by placing my knife in the hole and twisting it around to the desired diameter. To start the painting process, I'm using Revit Colour 65 Bronze Green. This is going to be the main colour of the tank, and I'm just going to be painting little parts as I go along, but it's only going to be the first coat. The final coat will go on right at the end. So it's onto the suspension, and the springs go into the central column here. They just get pushed on, no cement is required. And I've been playing around with this, and I really like this idea. The springs are fantastic. They will move the shock absorber up and down like it's meant to in real life. It's a very good design on this kit. They get placed onto the side of the house there. Now, initially I thought, oh, these are just going to fall out, but they were really nice and tight. So once I pressed them in, they weren't going to go anywhere. And as I said, you don't really need to have any cement for this part, but I would recommend placing them all in first before trying to marry up the two halves together. It is possible to do it the other way around, but it's a lot of mucking around. This way is a lot better. And plus the fact you can see exactly where you're going to be putting your cement. And once that's done, I can then put the back plate on. Now, when I took these springs out of the packet, they only appeared to be 11 and I needed 22. But the springs had interlocked with each other and it looked like there was just a single spring. So if you do have this kit, keep an eye out for that, because I actually spent about 20 minutes looking for more springs when they were right there in front of me. So the next part of the suspension is making up the secondary part. This is also forms the axle for the wheels. Each unit has its own individual dividing plate here. Now it's essential that you get these in the right place, and there is a top and bottom to them as well, so pay attention to what is the top and bottom, because this is important. When the other part goes on, it acts as a barrier to stop the suspension spring from popping up and putting your wheels out of alignment. So it's quite important to do it properly. There are, however, small location marks on the beam itself for you to fit them in, but also try and use a minimum amount of cement on this as well. The part I'm placing on now is the movable part for the suspension. Now, you don't want any cement on this whatsoever, and I found this quite tricky to do. The location points are very small, and there's not enough plastic sticking up to act as an axle, so you've got to be quite accurate. Now, I've placed them all on here, then married up the second half of the beam to close it all in. Again, I found this extremely difficult to do. It wasn't only until after I tried to line everything up, I found a slightly better way to do it. Because the partitions along the beam have to be accurate, it is difficult to line them up. And as I said, the other part that's got to be moving, the location points for them and the snub of plastic that holds it together is very small and they just fall off. So in the end, I took them off and I married up the two halves and put the supporting parts in again and realigned them with my tweezers until they were in that position. Then I was able then to fit the top half of the suspension. Now the plastic is very thin on these, so you can actually just prise them apart slightly to get the unit in place. Now I don't know whether that was how you were meant to do it in the first place, but I definitely found it easier to do it that way. Once everything was in place, I then had to maneuver these parts into the upright position before attaching it to the suspension springs. This acts to keep everything in position, and you know exactly where the lock-off point is going to be. Now, when you put these in position, they're gonna the housing for them is going to be slightly standing up proud from the main skirt. That's because of the spring is pushing up, of course. So you are going to have to press down once you cement it just to hold it in place. And I recommend holding it and not clamping it because you can damage the actual sidewall because the plastic is thin, like I said. But because it's standing up proud as such, placing the cement underneath it is no problem. And once it's on, you just press it down and everything will be set within 2 to 3 minutes. Well, enough for you to let go anyway. I did find even with that though, the top parts were moving, so I used a couple of small clamps just to clamp the movable part so that the suspension arm wouldn't pop out. As I said earlier though, the locations are tiny and there's not enough room, but not enough support on the axle to hold the part. So you really have to squeeze it right in so they just don't fall out. But the little clamps I'm using done that job perfectly. But you can only do this once the main two units are put together. Once everything's set and dried, it's time to place on the wheels. Now the suspension has to line up with the spring, and each one has its own little hole that lines up and you push the axle through. It can be a little bit tight if you haven't got them lined up properly, and some of the bars seemed a little bit thicker than the other ones, so you may have to just twist your knife around inside the opening just to open it up slightly. I should have mentioned as well, the head of the spring to the secondary part, there's only a tiny little bit of cement needed to connect the both together. Once that's all done and able to put on the other skirt on the other side, that just fits in very nice. So there's little location marks that run along it that goes inside the unit. Don't be afraid of you thinking, oh, it's oversized. It's meant to be like that. Next to go on is the track guides. The little apertures that go on the side there. They line up really nicely with the main track moulding on the part. It's just a little bit of cement needed to attach these. But you do have to be careful though, because the plastic is quite thin on these parts, so they will be prone to snapping. Next is the drive wheels. These are a simple construction. Each half has a little location marker inside for you to line up. The axle and sidewall has to be attached before you can place on. Now, theoretically, you can place the wheel on before placing on the sidewall, but that will add extra weight to it. So you better just replacing the wall, placing on the wall first of all. And of course, make sure it's completely dry and stable before you push on the drive wheel. Then to close up the opposite side, it's the same wall goes on. This one actually had a small little pilot hole to drill for a part that will be attached later on. The last wheel can be built on the frame itself. There's quite a large opening for this to set into. There is a location point for it to go in it's very tight, and you may have to open it up slightly just to fit it comfortably, but it will fit in on its own. It's just extremely tight to do so. Construction is practically the same as the other wheel, and this is where I'll end part 2. So if you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the channel for my other builds? If you subscribe to the channel, please do so. Make sure you hit the notification bell, that way you'll be kept up to date not only with this build but all my future builds as well, of course. Hit the like button, don't be afraid to leave a comment, and of course you can share the video. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.